Welcome to Tanakh Talk. I'm your host, William Hall, broadcasting live from Kingsland, Texas, USA, with another episode of Rabbi Chaim Coffman's Controversial Issues. Welcome to you from Israel, Rabbi Chaim Checkmate Coffman. Welcome back. Rabbi, how are you?
Come on, I'm only here for the introduction. That's it.
That's it. Thank you all for tuning in. See you next week.
Come on, you almost sneezed all the way through. That would have been great.
Oh, man. Yep, some things just never change. All right. So there we go. So we're going to kick this thing off with your specialized question for today. Are we allowed to have missionary be a motivational speaker in an orthodox synagogue? So you want to preface this right here and take it away. It's all yours.
Okay, it's always a pleasure to be here. And I think, we took this topic because it's something coming up. They're coming up in a few days, but I guess as a prelude, we'll throw out a trivia question, right? We'll throw out maybe we'll call it a Final Jeopardy, question. What did Dr. Ruth, the sex therapist, and a missionary have in common? They were both invited to an Orthodox synagogue to speak. Now, I like to say that was funny, but it's actually pretty sad, commentary. Same Orthodox synagogue, has Dr. Ruth, the sex therapist, speak, a number of years ago. And a couple of years ago, had a missionary that was going to come be a motivational speaker. And thank God the missionary backed off, right? There's a lot of complaints. People flooded this person and the synagogue. Meanwhile, the rabbi himself backed down. But the missionary felt bad. He felt bad. And even though some would say it's really not, top tier, regardless, right? There's a fundamental question. And the fundamental question is, why in the world would you bring a missionary who's known as a missionary to speak as a motivational speaker? All right? That's the obvious question. Now, I myself, since we do this show, Controversial Issues, so we've talked about, topics that most people in their right mind wouldn't necessarily want to deal with. We spoke about homosexuality, we spoke about oral law, pedophilia in the Talmud, things against non-Jews, a lot of different things. Freemasons, the angels have free will. So, okay, these are interesting topics that they're not forbidden topics, right? It's very interesting where I do think that people would, enjoy Jewish perspective, on certain things. But this is well beyond, right? 100% well beyond. And it could be I'm doing overkill because, I spoke about this in my Q&A last week, but it is a controversial thing. And it is coming up, in the next few days, God forbid. So now, which really lend the question, why in the world would someone do this? If there are enough motivational speakers that are Orthodox, that are religious, why would you bring in a non-Jew? Not only that, the last one they wanted to pay a ton of money. The Jewish Federation Florida was going to pay a ton of money for this guy to speak. I would have done it for a third of the price, maybe even a quarter, probably even less. Right? But what? There aren't good enough Jewish speakers, out there. So someone's going to say, like, what's the big deal? Right? What in the world is a big deal over here? If he's going to be a motivational speaker, right? He's not going to hand out, God forbid, he's not going to hand out any missionary stuff, wink, wink, right? Of course, he's not going to do that, right? But he's got a golden opportunity. He's got a golden opportunity to come and speak. Doesn't really matter where he speaks in the synagogue, right? Hopefully, he's not speaking in the sanctuary. Even speaking in the ballroom, he's speaking in the kitchen, he's speaking out of it. Doesn't matter. Why in the world would you give someone legitimacy speaking in a synagogue, right? Somebody like this. Even if he's not speaking about JC, right? Motivational speaker, what difference does it make? There's a whole question in general in an Orthodox synagogue. Should we let a non-Jew come and speak? So maybe someone will say it depends. Depends what he's talking about or what she's talking about. Maybe they're talking about accounting. Maybe they're talking about, science where it doesn't contradict Torah. But I'll say it's 100% forbidden, to bring non-Jew to come or whatever it is, to speak. The question is, are they speaking in line with what the Torah said? Right now, obviously, we're not going to vet this person. He's going to come if he's a motivational speaker, he promises, now let's just say, 100%, he promises he's only going to speak, try to inspire people, very powerful things, nothing to do with Christianity. So I'm going to say, so what a big deal. Why would we say it's such a big deal? Because it is a big deal. We don't want people coming in who don't represent our values. Right? 100%. This person does not represent our values. Now, I understand it's kind of like, a fox being in a chicken coop. Right? It makes perfect sense why he would want to be there. Not only that, he himself said explicitly what a tremendous opportunity he's been given to learn Torah with Orthodox rabbis. Now, what's the problem with that? Right? So the problem is the great rabbis of the last generation, Moshe Feinstein of blessed memory, Torah giant, right? In America, the last generation of Aaron Cutler, head of the Lakewood Yeshiva of blessed memory, Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky, Rav Shabir Soloveitchik, all these great rabbis, many others as well, 100% said you're not allowed to have interfaith dialogue. Now, we're doing this as controversial issues. Someone's going to say, come on, 5 minutes, I don't have to listen anymore. I know it's forbidden. So what's the point? Why would somebody do it? So that's a good question. We're going to get into the psyche a little bit about that. But what would be the point of having, let's say, an interfaith dialogue? What possibly could be the problem? Right? So we know that, there are not too many things that we have in common with Christians. Right? Most people are probably aware, even though, quote unquote, the Christians will say the base of their religion is based on the Old Testament, quote unquote, and then they go off the rails. They go off the charts. They say we're not chosen anymore. They turn the Torah into a pretzel. They define, they change the interpretation, of what the verses say, mistranslation, all these different things. So my question would be, in general, and again, there are much greater people than me that said this should never be done, right? But we're going to throw it out there, just analyze for a second. What is there to gain? What would there be to gain by having a dialogue with different religions? All right, Christianity, Islam, whatever it is. So, person could say like this. They could say, you know what? If you're talking about Noahites, and you're having a dialogue, you're getting together, that's a different story, because they don't believe in idolatry. So if they don't believe in idolatry, they're in your camp, right? Whether they keep more mitzvahs, less mitzvahs, right? Pretty much, hopefully, they should be, in the Orthodox camp over here. So there we have a lot in common, right? We believe in the same things. Here, we don't believe in the same things. Now, as I heard somebody say, if there were more non-Jews that would be Noahites, there'd be a lot less anti-Semitism. I mean, they claim to be no anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism will not disappear until the Messiah comes, right? So it's always going to be there. Sometimes it'll be more, sometimes it'll be less, whatever it is, but it'll never fully disappear. But the idea I hear, in other words, if there be more Noahites out there, there'd be less anti-Semitism to a certain extent. I mean, you need a lot of Noahites. Fine, but we're not out to proselytize. Even though someone will say, come on, you Jews, you're the chosen nation. So if you're the chosen nation, you're the chosen people, so you should be out there, walking over the pavement over there, pounding the pavement and putting up signs all over the place, convincing non-Jews to be Noahites. Not my job, right? It's certainly not my job. If a non-Jew comes to me, which it says was brought down in the Messianic era, right? At the time before the Messiah comes, non-Jews are going to come to Jews, they're going to grab on the tzitzis, and they're going to say, we want to learn Torah. You should teach us Torah. Okay. But who says I have to go out there? We've spoken about this before. Spoken about it a number of times. Who says that's my job? My job is to go out there and find non-Jews to be Noahites. Not my job. Right? If they come to me, they should, and I know what I'm doing, hopefully, or a rabbi knows what they're doing, they should educate them or put them in the direction where they can be educated. But to say I have to pound the pavement and put up signs and try and, have all these non-Jews be Noahites, that's not my job. But I would agree, 100% I would agree that the more Noahites out there, these would be for Jews, right? The less anti-Semitism there would be, okay. So that's by Noahites. That I would hear, there's a benefit. There's a tremendous benefit. Now, if you're telling me people of a different religion, they don't, Christians, it's easier it's easier to knock them out because their quote unquote their base is based on the Torah, right? As much as they say, based on the Old Testament. If it's based on the Old Testament, forget why they don't keep it, or why they don't keep very much of it, or whatever the case is. That doesn't matter. But that's where their base is. So someone will say, come on, at least they have the base. At least you have common ground. How much common ground really is there? They're turning the Torah into a pretzel. They're misquoting things. They're mistranslating things. Right? So there's really not much that's going to come out of it because the bottom line is we don't believe in their Savior. We don't believe in their Savior. Right? Make fun of them. We'll say all kinds of things because it's to make fun of idolatry. Right? 100%. But at the end of the day, we don't believe in the same things. Right? We don't believe the Messiah has come. We certainly don't believe he is the Messiah. And as we've always said, anytime you find a flaw in the book, whatever book of religion there is, then the book cannot be true. All you have to do is find one flaw. If there's a flaw, God forbid, in the Torah, we'd say the same thing, right? Whatever flaw there would be, we would say the exact same thing. That it can't be true. But that's not really the point over here to prove whether it's true or not. We know it's not true. But the point is, why would I sit with them? What could I gain? Wow, it's an exchange of ideas. Exchange of ideas. I'm going to sit there and learn Talmud that they didn't believe in? No. Right? I'm going to learn Tanakh. I could learn Tanakh with them, in theory. But obviously they're going to turn into a pretzel. If they'd be interested in truth, which none of them are. But if they would be interested in truth and they wanted to have a discussion, we can have a discussion. Right? That's not a problem. Having a dialogue, what does that sound like? That sounds like I'm giving them a soapbox. That sounds like I'm giving them legitimacy. And the one thing we can't do, either with them or Reform Rabbi, Conservative Rabbi, is to say what they do is legitimate. Because it's not. By Reform and Conservative, they cover up the Torah. It's like a 5-year option to renew. If I want to do it, I don't want to do it. I'll keep what I want. I'll pick and choose. By the Reform, they'll throw everything out. Maybe they'll do a few things here and there. Conservative a little bit more. Why should I have dialogue with them? Right? The only mitzvah to deal with them is the fact that you want to try and draw them closer. Draw them closer to what the Torah really says, not what they say. Because in the last 250 years, you go back 200 years, maybe, 220, 230 years, everybody seemingly was Orthodox. Some more, some less. But everybody was more or less the same. So now they say, we're going to bring Torah, we're going to bring Judaism into the 20th century, 21st century. They're going to change this, change that, change the other thing. We know what they've done is a travesty of a mockery of Hashem. But not only that, it doesn't work. It statistically doesn't work. I was talking to someone over Shabbos, someone who grew up near where I grew up. I was mentioning some of the bigger synagogues, 1,000 families, 500 families, 800 families. They're dead, gone. Building sold, right? The synagogue, that I went to a number of times, when I was younger, and they had for Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, since they'd have so many members, so they joined up with a few other synagogues in order to, to have services. So I told my father once, to bless the memory, you should take your gavel, go on the lectern, and go on the bima, and say, my son in Israel says, repeat after me, Yiskadal v'Yiskadash, right? That's the mourner's prayer, right? Because they're going to die, right? Essentially, they're going to die. It's only a matter of when. So, a friend of my father's, I knew for many years, and he told my father, he said, tell your son in Israel, we're not going to die, right? We're never going to die. We're not going to die. So I laughed. Why? Because the average age of that synagogue was 75 years old. Now, what does that mean? That means it's a mourner's minyan, right? It's basically old people getting together, and that's it. And what happens when they die? The synagogue will die. So, person, we're never going to die. We're never going to die. 2 years. 2 years after that statement, they closed up shop. They sold the building, right? Because there was nobody there. Right, and they can't pass it down. But we've spoken about that a lot also. So now these quote unquote, rabbis, what do we have in common over here? You can say they're still Jewish. You're right, 100%. But our goal is to draw them closer to us, right? You can do that by learning, do that by other things. But we're not going to give them necessarily a pedestal, in order that they're going to be able to say what they want to say, right? Their heresy. Their ideas obviously go counter to Torah. Now, I did hear somebody say that, they were part of such a dialogue. I don't know if they were, whatever, they confessing that they did, but they, they felt, it was necessary to be part of this panel discussion in order to give over what the Orthodox say. Now, some may say maybe for doing Jewish outreach, trying to draw people closer, maybe it's okay. The problem is the great rabbis of the last generation, said both things. They said not only are you not allowed, to be part of an interfaith thing, you're not allowed to give these other quote-unquote rabbis legitimacy, because they're not legit. Because it doesn't say anywhere in the Torah I'm allowed to pick and choose, right? Regardless of what they say, they don't have the proof and all that. So we're not even going there. We're going to make it very easy. So now, by these other so-called religions, which we believe to be false, we're going to be grasping at straws in order to say, look what we have in common. We have 3 things in common, 5 things in common. Maybe we have a little bit more in common. Maybe not. But, they're not going to change us. That's never going to happen, right? They're not going to change us. We're not going to change them. So what is the point of having a dialogue, of an exchange of ideas, if no one is really going to listen to what the other says? Right? It's either my way or the highway in general. We certainly believe we're right, beyond the shadow of a doubt. We've spoken about this, why we think they're right and everyone else is wrong. They're going to say the same thing, right? They're 100% going to say the same thing. They're right. Their book is from God. Everyone else is wrong, blah, blah, blah. So you're at a stalemate. Even before you start, you're 100% at a stalemate. So now what are you going to do? You're going to convince them, right? I'm going to convince, a Christian, pastor, a missionary, whatever. I'm going to convince them JC's not the Savior. I don't think they're going to be so interested. I'm going to show them Rabbi Singer stuff, Rabbi Skobac stuff. They're going to say, oh, wow, that's the explanation. Wow, I'm so glad you enlightened me. Probably not, right? Unless they're real serious thinkers and they really want absolute truth, right? It's kind of like telling, my Rabbi was by somebody many years ago. It was a doctor giving a lecture. And he gave a lecture about the hazards of smoking. He's talking probably 50 years ago, 60 years more, probably 70 years ago. And this doctor spoke for like an hour. He spoke for an hour about the hazards of smoking. And then what did he do after the lecture? Right, Murphy's Law. What did he do? He lit up a cigarette. But he's telling them it's going to cut off years from your life. You'll be totally unhealthy, blah, blah, blah. So Rabbi asked him, what are you doing? You just spoke for an hour. How in the world can you speak an hour about the bad effects of cigarette smoking if you know it's so bad? So he said, listen, I know it's bad. I know it's going to take years away from my life, but I enjoy it so much I can't give it up. Now, it could be. It's all the problem with nicotine, and it's addictive and all that. Fine, but that's not what he was saying. He wasn't saying I could give it up at any time. He said, why would I want to give it up? I enjoy it so much. But it's going to cut off years from your life. So what? Right? What do I care? It's going to cut off years from my life. I enjoy it. So what? We're going to tell somebody everything that they believe in, it's a lie. And I got proof. When a person deals with a missionary, and I've had this experience a few times, and I had, when I was in South America, in Chile, so the second biggest place where there are Mormons outside of Salt Lake City, right? Not exactly sure how they got there. 2 Mormons come to my door. And I wouldn't say they were the brightest guys I ever came in contact with, but they were just like talking to a missionary. They said one thing, I asked them a question, they didn't have an answer. So what they do, they went on to something else. When I asked them a question about that, they also didn't have an answer. So they went on to something else. By the third topic, I said, listen, I'm a little bit thick over here. I mean, people can say a lot of things about me, but I said, I'm a little bit thick in the head. Why don't you get answers? So what was their knockout blow to me? He said, don't you understand? John Smith, there was a book, the book was hidden for 200 years. What an unbelievable story. I said, did you ever read the book of Exodus? Did you ever read the book of Exodus, chapter 19? Right, chapter 18, 19, when the Jews come out. Jews come out from Egypt. How many Jews come out? Right? Jews come out between 600,000 men between the ages of 20 and 60, not including women and children. So you're talking about 3 million people. Right? So God revealed himself to 3 million people, Exodus chapter 20, giving over the 10 commandments. Right? Giving over the 10 commandments. Everybody was there. Everybody was there. So I said, nobody else makes such a claim. The Christians don't make such a claim. Muslims don't make a claim. No other religion makes such a claim. Right in front of 3 million people. Never been duplicated. So I said, no, the Christians can say we're not chosen anymore. Or the Muslims say they're not chosen, we're chosen, whatever it is. But no one disagrees with the facts. Those are the facts. Right? So I said, you're telling me John Smith came, found a book 200 years. I got a better story. Exodus chapter 20. I go, that beats your little story of 200 years, doesn't it? 3 million people. That was the end of the discussion. That was totally the end of the discussion. Right? But they didn't have any answers. They never came back to me. Right? Because they don't have answers. So we're not going to convince them. We're not going to convince them because they're not open-minded. And most people I found in the last 30 years, I found one open-minded person. One person who told me, listen, if I look into Judaism and I find out it's true and I have to change my life, I'm not willing to do it. Right? So I'm not going to look into it. Okay, that person was intellectually honest. Everyone else says, nope, it's not true. Right? I'm Haba, the next world. Oh, come on. Right? You really believe in that? I think it's truth, life after death, blah, blah, blah. So they're not saying, you don't have proof. Why? Because they're not looking for proof. I said, listen, they'll say, like someone told me, they said, okay, give me the short version of after death. Give me the 30-second version. Now, what would happen? I'd start talking. After 5 seconds, they'd stop me. Right? No matter how quick I spoke, they would stop me after 5 seconds. So they're not interested in an answer. So what's the point? There is no point. So I sent them a link. I said, here, you want to find out about life after death? Watch this. Did they watch it? No idea. Right? But I sent them the information. Now, most likely, a Christian or a Muslim has no interest in looking at our information. We have no interest in looking at their information. It's a stalemate. 100% a stalemate. So now, the $1 million question is, if there's a stalemate, what's the benefit? Where's the commonality? End of life issues. Commonality in that? No. Right? But, abortion. Right? By them, they'll say, if the mother's in danger, and it's a choice between the mother and the child, according to them, mother dies, the child survives. Right? They'll say the child will kill the mother. Right? The mother will die. By us, just the opposite. Nope, we don't have that in common. Right? Because we go after potential right now, not future potential. So okay, we don't have that in common. And there are a million other things we don't have in common. So I would ask a very simple question: what would be the point of this? Seemingly, there's who wants to waste time if you're not going to get anything out of it? Now, someone might say you might be planting seeds. That's what we say by Jewish outreach. We're planting seeds. Propaganda never goes to waste. One thing can lead to another. You never know. Right? In this case, how many of these people, right? How many missionary, thumping Christians, we're going to have a dialogue. And they can say, oh, that's the explanation. Kind of like Elie Wiesel. Elie Wiesel, Holocaust writer, not here to demean him in any way, or his image. He wrote a lot of books about the Holocaust, suffered tremendously through the Holocaust. We can't imagine what, such a person went through. And he wrote a lot of books about the Holocaust. So imagine if I would have come up to him during his lifetime and I came up to the end of the Holocaust. I said, the Holocaust happened for this reason, that reason. Let's say it's logical, it's not, whatever, it doesn't matter. Right? I come up with an answer, some sort of answer. Oh, that's the answer. I've been, writing all these books. No more books. Right? I'm all done. He's got an issue. Again, I'm not judging one way or another. Right? He's got an agenda. Right? And his agenda is what it is. Am I going to say anything that would have convinced him never to write any more Holocaust books? No. That was his thing. So anyone else who has an agenda, and they certainly have an agenda, because if they don't believe in JC, that's it. They're going to fry in hell forever. And that's going to be the last thing for a Christian to let go of, unless they know for sure it's not true. That whole thing, that whole story, is not true. So again, the question would be, where's the commonality? Seemingly, there's no commonality. If there's no commonality, why would I waste my time? There'd be no point. And we said before, the great rabbi of the last generation says, forbidden. You can't give them legitimacy. Right? That's the point. Now, that's by way of introduction. Let's go to this, let's go to what's going on now. I think in the next couple of days, there's a missionary supposed to come and speak in the synagogue in Boca Raton. Right, in Florida. Now, this is not the first time it's happened. Right, a couple years ago, similar thing happened, and the speaker backed out. The rabbi himself didn't back down. The speaker backed down, right? And, the rabbi was defiant till the end. And he said it's a desecration of God's name. Imagine, someone's going to say, an Orthodox Jew is going to say that the fact that the missionary backed down and that, Orthodox Jews gave him a hard time about coming, that's a desecration of God's name. Is there anything that sounds any more foolish than that? We live in an upside-down world, an absolute upside-down world. Now, if I wanted to judge this person favorably, which I have no obligation, because of other things this person said and done, right? And someone's going to say, hey, you're speaking Lashon Hara about this person. Yeah, he's a Russian. He's evil. Chaim says clear. I'm going to say whatever I want about him, right? I make fun of him, say all kinds of things, if I want to. That's not my point, right? I can do that in my own time. I don't have to waste anyone else's time, right? But the point is, people have to understand what, my question is, I think other people, most everyone else asks a similar question. What's this person thinking? Why would you let somebody like that? It doesn't matter where they speak. They can speak in a rec hall. They can speak in the kitchen. They can, they can speak in the side bill. It doesn't matter if they're not speaking, in front of the pulpit. That would be even worse. That'd be 10 times worse. But why are you giving the person a place to speak? So I'm going to put this person, on par with Dr. Ruth. I wouldn't let her speak either. Right? Why in the world? It's going to be separate, this and that. I understand why I might want to bring them. Bring her to a certain extent. Listen, big personality. It's going to draw a lot of people. Missionary is a different level. I don't care if he's on a top 10 tier missionary. This guy's a big time missionary, though. Right? But even so, someone's going to say, come on, you really think he's going to put missionary stuff in people's mailbox? This other guy did. Passed around the whole community. Right? So you can't trust them. You can't trust them for the life of them. So if the person now, the question would be, so now this person has an agenda. Right? It's pretty clear. All you have to do is hear what he says. He's got a clear agenda. His agenda is get as many Jews as he can. That's his agenda. He's a missionary. Right? That's pretty clear. Now, if that is clear, doesn't matter what he speaks about. Now, I'll even give the benefit of the doubt, which I don't have to. I'll give the benefit of the doubt. He's not going to mention Jesus. He's not even going to slip things in there about Christian belief. Let's say he's there, I don't know, to make people feel better, build them up, who knows what. Not to mention anything about Christianity. Someone will say, and I guarantee this is part of the mentality, that someone will say, so what's the big deal? So what? So, if he's going to speak about, I don't know, he's going to speak about science. He's a world famous cardiologist, let's say. And he's going to speak about science, right? He's going to speak about medicine. So he came up with something, whatever, some novelty. So he comes in, he's going to speak about that. But he also has his background. And he has his baggage. So even if it's something, I would say, let's say it's Parv. It's Parv, it's neutral like Switzerland. If you know what he represents, and you know what's behind, you know where it's going to go eventually. Not maybe in the discussion. But I mentioned this a couple of years ago. You think afterwards he's not going to be handing out cards, not going to be handing out flyers, he's not, oh no, he's not going to do that. Of course he's not going to do that. He's got a golden opportunity, right? He's a fox in a chicken coop. What do you think he's doing there? He thinks it's the greatest thing. They're giving me an opportunity. They're giving me a golden opportunity. I don't know how many times not that I followed this, many years ago. But I haven't heard too many times where you have a church or a mosque that's allowing the rabbi come and speak to them, right? I don't see open invitations. Now, it could be. I also heard of someone who's open Orthodoxy. We'll speak about that, which really isn't Orthodox at all. They had a Baptist group come in and sing in the synagogue. You go, okay, they're singing, so big deal. There's a limit over here. What is correct, what's not correct. I don't think we have to be rocket scientists to understand this is beyond the boundaries. Well beyond the boundaries. Even if you want to tell me nothing negative is going to come out of it, could be some of the things he's speaking about are in line with Torah, but or speaking about something totally, different. But he's going to motivate them however he's going to do it. Why in the world can't you find a Jewish speaker to do it? there not good enough Jewish speakers out there? Plenty. Yeah, you're going to have to pay them. Fine. You're not going to have to pay them close to what you're paying this guy. I'm sure. I mean, the Federation was only paid a ton of money for this other idea before. A couple years ago. A ton of money. It's what a waste of money. Give it to a Jew, for goodness sakes. Why should you have a missionary? You say, why, discriminate against non-Jews? No. We want people going to speak and motivate other Jews and not lead them astray. Not with crazy philosophy, not with anything else. I hear less what they know in other fields. It's relevant. I wouldn't want them in my synagogue. I wouldn't want them anywhere near me. Why? It's what they represent. So you're going to say, but they're not going to say anything. They promise. So let's say they keep their promise. Big whoop, as we would say. Or as we say in Boston, who the heck cares? That's irrelevant. I don't care what, you don't think he's going to slip up? Maybe he won't. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. I'm in a good mood. So what? So maybe he won't. But you're gonna give him the time of day to speak. Someone's gonna say, "What? You think our belief in God is so weak that we're gonna look at this material?" Listen, everyone's got an evil inclination. Everybody does, right? So it's not out of the realm of reality. We don't get in discussions with these people. We don't. You can say so. Let Rabbi Singer deal with it. Fine. So he's an expert. World expert. Rabbi Skobac, a world expert. They don't go around necessarily debating people. Rabbi Singer has. I know he has. Right? I've seen some of the things that, that he's done. Fine. But most people are not going to do that in general. They're just not going to do that. So if that's the case, and I guarantee, this rabbi's certainly not an expert Christianity, right? I'm pretty convinced of that. But somebody who does such a thing, let's just think for a second. He has his own beis din. He's got his own beis din accepted in Israel. Well, it's sort of on waiver. I think it's on waivers right now. By conversions. Because I think the chief rabbi threatened him the last time he tried to bring in a missionary. Right? They're trying to knock him out now because of what he's doing now. But I would ask the following question. And the question is, somebody like that, I don't care what they know. They could have 10 times greater knowledge than me in 10 lifetimes. That's great. They could be brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Would you want them doing your conversion? They're bringing someone who flies in the face of everything for everything. Not to mention, if you know a little bit about history, how many Jews over the millennium have been killed in JC's name? Hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands. Kiss the cross and die. You got the Inquisition, you got other crusades, all kinds of things. All kinds of things. So if you know about history, you understand history. This is what this person represents the other side. What do I care if he's speaking about higher mathematics? What would I care? I'll give another example, which nobody thinks in these terms. Right? Let's talk about Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving is all about turkey and football. Not necessarily in that order. What was Thanksgiving? Thanksgiving, they made peace with the Indians, right? They had this whole meal, blah, blah, blah. Then what happens? They slaughter all the Indians. People like us or die. Say, hey, there's an idea, manifest destiny. We're going to go to New York and California. We're going to settle all these other places. So what they do, fine. So people went out, settled other places. They got attacked by the Indians. So they go back to the government and say, listen, we want to settle here. We got a problem with the Indians. So the cavalry comes out, they destroy the Indians. Now, if you know about American history, you know that tens of thousands, millions of Indians killed. Now you're going to say, they fought, they started this, whatever the reason, doesn't really matter, right? They got demolished. Now they're stuffing aerosol cans and have casinos. That's about what's left of them, today. So if you know anything about history, if you know anything about it, let's say better, about American history, how in the world do Turkey celebrate Thanksgiving? Now, Thanksgiving has other issues. Victor Miller, blessed memory, says it was a religious holiday before. A lot of people disagree with it. Or you could say, well, I shouldn't go in the way of the non-Jews. I shouldn't go in the way of the non-Jews. Right? I shouldn't celebrate it. Kids should be in school. Right? When I was in America, my kids were in school on Thanksgiving. Right? So it was a normal day. So even without all that, if you know about the history, what's behind it. Now, nobody... It's all, no one thinks in those terms. Nobody. Right? I shouldn't say nobody. Very few people. You don't have all these activists out there. All these pro-Indian activists saying, no, can't celebrate it. right? No, we can't eat turkey on Thanksgiving. They'll say, fine. You can't do the tomahawk chop anymore for the Atlanta Braves, right? Washington, it can't be the Redskins because, that offends them. So now you got one team that has no name. Imagine you got a football team that's got no name. The Washington football team. It's a crazy thing. Got no name. Okay, but you don't want to offend the Indians. But what about Thanksgiving? Oh, the Indians don't care about Thanksgiving. I don't know. If you know anything about history, why don't they care about Thanksgiving? Right? Because after Thanksgiving, they're all slaughtered. Right? Shortly thereafter. So why wouldn't they care? No, Thanksgiving was okay. Okay, but it doesn't make sense logically. But nobody's thinking in those terms, and people are going to say, you're probably the only one who probably thinks this way. Maybe. But if you know a little bit about history, then in theory, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense at all why Haman would celebrate it. Right? But the Jewish aspect has nothing to do with it. It has nothing to do with the ways of the non-Jews, and all that. Right? Today it's about football and turkey. That's it. Right? It has no roots meaning. And it doesn't have that meaning. You're going to wipe out all the Indians. No one's going to say that. They're going to come on, that happened 300 years ago, 400 years ago. The Indians are already over it. Okay, let's take a survey of Indians. They'll take a survey, 100,000 Indians. Say, by the way, you over that? You think Thanksgiving is a problem? People will say no. So maybe it's a moot point. But what's my point here? What's my way backwards point here? My point is, if you know something about what this thing represents and what's behind it, then how are you eating turkey on Thanksgiving? How are you celebrating it? Right? What about their rights? Come on. You got the leftists out there, animal rights, this, gay rights, this rights, everybody. What about the Indians? What about the Indians? No, that's different. They don't care about that. They don't care about the football team, care about the tomahawk chop, right? That you can't do in a baseball game, for the Atlanta Braves and all that. But it's a non-issue. It's okay. So maybe even according to the biggest leftists in the world, it's a total non-issue. But what about what it represents? Nobody cares what it represents. You're right. They'll take off and go home. And nobody cares. Nobody cares what it represents. It's about football and turkey. Fine. What about what this guy represents? What do I care what he says about anything? I don't care if it's about football. Maybe he's an expert. He's a world-class bettor. He knows everything about football. You're going to bring him in to, to speak about that. Who knows? Whatever it is. Whatever it is. What do I care? It's what he represents. It's what he represents. So now you have somebody who's willing to bring in people, for modesty reasons, bring in a sex therapist, and for practical reasons, bring in a missionary, right? So now he's very well respected, in the Jewish community, but he's a heretic. He's an absolute heretic, right? Bringing these type of people in, he's going to say there's nothing wrong with it. I heard him say, he's got a rabbi, someone big, in the Jewish world. Jewish orthodox world that told him it wasn't a problem. But this rabbi doesn't want to go public with his name. Yeah. Of course he doesn't want to go public with his name. You're not going to be that stupid, right? He's going to say, yeah, I permitted it. Really? Right? I'll give one example. I was in South America. There was a rabbi there that was a bunch of guys that were learning in came back for Passover. So they're having a mixed party, which I'm going to say totally the end of the world for the sake of doing outreach. Right? Some people would disagree. That's fine. But they're having a Purim party at night, a mixture of men and women. So he said, he wanted these guys, these yeshiva guys, spent 6 months, learning Torah day and night. He wanted them to come. He told a bunch of them to come. Why are you going to tell somebody like that to come to a mixed event? And mess them up, potentially. So one of the rabbis there said, if your rabbi tells you that you're allowed to do this, I'll put it in writing. I'll put it right on I'll put it on the door of my synagogue. If he said it's okay. Of course he didn't say it's okay. That'd be pretty simple, right? He never said it's okay, right? But even if God forbid someone would, they're not going to put their name on it. They're never going to put their name on it. Even though technically there's nothing wrong with it. But my question is, what about what it represents? What about what it represents? What about what the potential repercussions are? Missionary material all over these neighborhoods. You don't think it's going to do it? I wouldn't put it past them. Not at all. Church got plenty of money for this. They'll send people around, stick it in every Jew's door, in their doorpost, whatever, in their mailbox. Let's say better. They'll stick it. You don't think it's going to happen? It happened before. You guys say, what? That's not going to happen. This guy's different, right? We have to realize even if something technically would be permissible, let's say technically it would be permissible, not everything permissible necessarily should be done, right? I give the example. There was a woman who wanted to wear tzitzis. She wanted to wear tzitzis. Now, technically today it's called a male garment, right? So it would be a total prohibition for a woman to wear it, right? Unless you would, make it, let's say, pink or, a woman type of color or whatever it is. Maybe in that sense, maybe it'd be a woman's garment. There are other issues with it we're not going to get into. This woman, started bringing me different proofs why it should be okay. So we're going back and forth. And she said, well, don't you agree this could be true? I said, what if I do? What if I would agree? First of all, I never put my name to it, even if I did agree, right? Because I wouldn't want my name to get out there. Second thing is, I said, you have two boys to marry off. Right? You have two sons you want to marry off. So I will tell you, and this was my bottom line. I said, I will tell you, if that ever gets public, that you as a woman wear tzitzis, and, because people are going to do research, right? You got a son, where does he learn? What's the family like? Who knows the family? Blah, blah, blah. So you do research. So if it comes out, unless it's hidden, if it comes out that this married woman, is wearing tzitzis, again, even if I would agree, maybe other great rabbis bigger than me, let's say maybe they would agree. But if a woman does that, guess what? They're going to be seen as like a wacko. They're going to be seen as like whacked upside the head. Why? Because they're doing something no one else does. They're taking Jewish law and throwing it, and trying to turn it into an absolute pretzel. Right? It's kind of like Plastic Man, just like, let's see how far we can stretch it. So I said, if you ever want to marry off your kids, you won't do it. And then they got very upset. But don't you think this? I said, it doesn't matter what I think. It's irrelevant what I think or what anyone else thinks. I'm telling you the reality on the ground. If you stick out way too much, people are gonna think you're a little bit strange and you're a little bit wacky. And if that is the case, they'll never marry into your family. Your kids will never get set up with anybody. Now, could it be, even if this woman did it, could it be their kids will still get married? I'm not saying forever they're not going to get married, right? But people are going to think twice and 3 times and 4 times. Even if there's nothing wrong, let's say these boys are the greatest boys. They sit and learn. They want to sit and learn for a long time, blah, blah, blah. It could be a great catch, right? But the mother's a little bit screwy, right? So if the mother's a little bit screwy, don't you think that might come out in the kids? Maybe, potentially. So that was my threat. I said, you can do it. I'm not going to say, you can do what you want. I'm not saying it's okay. But I said, you want to do it, fine. Just realize if you do it and people find out, you're going to have a very hard time marrying off your kids. Very, very hard time. That's the reality. Now, you take something like this, multiply that by infinity. Because now you're doing something that's I'm not even going to say like an English saying, that it's dicey. This is worse than being dicey. This is saying, I'm going to be open-minded until my brains fall on the floor. I don't care how many Jews died in JC's name. I don't care about any of these things. I don't care what they do, how they connive, how they lie, how they manipulate, how they, change meaning of the verses, mistranslate, whatever you want to call it. And all that, I'm going to let this guy speak about mathematics. Or I'm going to let him speak about something else. Well, how can a person do that? It does, So what some people would say is, if a person went to university, went to college, that messed up their brain. Totally messed up their brain. Right? I can say I have an Ivy League degree from Columbia University. Not so impressive. Right? But, in the end, a lot of classes I took, there's a lot of material. It's heretical. It's absolutely heretical. And not only that, just other things that people say and how they act, different, philosophical outlooks, and all that. And, I'm talking more than 30 years ago. And today it's a heck of a lot worse. Right? Than it was. That was in my day. In my day, it's pretty bad. Right? So someone can get messed up by philosophy, secular philosophy. They can get messed up by all kinds of things. Maybe that's what's going on. But the problem is, in the modern Orthodox world, I'm not going to say by everybody, There are, some very serious people that learn in the modern Orthodox world, but a lot of them have 2 feet in the secular world, a quarter foot in the religious world. That's why they say, oh, the Haredim this, the Haredim that, the ultra-Orthodox, bunch of fanatics, closed-minded. We're closed-minded for a reason, for a very good reason, because we don't want anything else to come in except Torah, except proper Jewish philosophy. Because we don't have proper Jewish philosophy, what happens? We'll take someone who's on the Sanhedrin, Elisha ben Abuya, otherwise known as Acher, known as the other one, right? How did he become a heretic? How did he become a heretic? Because he started, he had some crisis in faith and different things, and he started reading heretical things. And then one thing led to another, and boom, became a heretic. Doesn't happen overnight. Definitely doesn't happen overnight. But when a person comes in contact with heretical philosophies and other things, and then get in their mind, and they say, okay, I want to be part of this group, fine, I want to see how far we can stretch things. Hey, things are permissible. Things are not forbidden necessarily according to the letter of the law. No one's going to say, come on, you don't have a proof in the Torah. You haven't quoted one source, that says that this should be forbidden. So maybe it's common sense. Maybe I don't need a source, right? Maybe 100% I don't need a source to say why it's forbidden, right? But you're giving someone legitimacy doesn't deserve it, right? We could say, this person's part of a false religion. When it comes to being part of a false religion, or someone's a heretic, you don't listen to them. You're not allowed to listen to them. You have to stay away from them. So in this case, why is that any different? Well, why would it be any different? So now you want to tell me I want to be so open-minded, right? And it's going to be such an unbelievable thing. Look how many people are going to come to the event. Probably a lot. Probably a good moneymaker, right? It depends how much you have to pay him. Probably a very good moneymaker, right? I'm all for controversy is going to bring people in as long as it's legit. If it's not legit, you're doing something like this, you're doing a total disservice. Total disservice. You're taking the Torah and say, okay, I want to see how far I can take it. But see that this is the problem. If you don't have proper Jewish outlook and proper Jewish philosophy, then what happens? Anything goes. Anything goes. If a person doesn't have fixed times to learn, doesn't learn under the right people. I had somebody tell me, I'll give an example. Someone in the religious Zionist world, right? Modern Orthodox, because that's how we're going to label them. And this person said, when I was leaving the yeshiva, they said, I don't care where you go as long as it's Zionistic and as long as you do the army. Now, I was of age, I could have done the army. But I said, I don't understand. I have a lot of money. I have a lot of money in my pocket here. I could sit and learn, for as long as I want. I have no barriers here. In the next 10 years, I could go through most of the Talmud and the commentaries. I could really make something of myself. And this person said, that's great. You still have to do the army. So there's a question, there's a mitzvah to live in the land of Israel. And even if you tell me there's a mitzvah to live in the land of Israel, which says I have to do the army. Now someone will claim, in David's time, didn't they have a standing army? Yeah. And if there's a war, everyone is obligated to fight, everyone goes to fight. We're not living in those. You need a standing army, not saying not. Right? But you also need people to sit and learn. Because if you don't have people sitting and learning, the army's never going to be successful. And the only reason that the army's been successful has been miraculous. All the wars have been absolutely miraculous, many different ways. Right? But the point I'm getting at is, what did he say? So this rabbi said, even though everybody agrees, nobody disagrees on the fact that learning Torah is the most important thing. There's nothing more important than learning Torah. There are times I may have to close my Gemara, to do other things, right? If there's somebody who died, if someone to bury them, then, no burial society and I'm around, I have to stop learning, I have to bury the person. A bride and groom come along, right nearby, I have to go and make them happy. Right? There are certain things I have to do that I'm allowed to stop learning when I'm learning, in order to do something else. Doing the army is not one of them, unless it's an obligation where everyone has to go to war. But what's the heretical thing this person said? This person said that doing the army is much more important than learning Torah. Who's got the shoulders to say such a thing? The Torah is nothing more important. Ever! There's nothing more important. But for someone to say, this is more important than learning Torah, it's got a screw loose somewhere. That's heresy. That's heresy 101. I had someone I went to yeshiva with, did the army, and, we had a discussion one Friday night, came to my house for Shabbos. So Friday night, we have a discussion. She comes up about the army, why the ultra-Orthodox don't do the army. We spoke about it once. And bottom line, what the person say, I was just waiting for him to be a heretic, and he came out and said, if I wasn't doing the army, Syria would come and invade. I said, oh, so I said, I was clocking, it only took you an hour. I thought it would make less time, but, I see that you're a heretic. He's like, what do you mean? I keep Torah, I keep mitzvahs, I keep Shabbos, I keep kosher. What do you mean? I said, you believe that there's a God that runs the world? He said, yes. He said, you believe in the power of Torah, that the power of Torah has the ability to protect. And he said, yes. He said, but you need an army. I said, I didn't say you don't need an army. You're telling me if there's no army, Syria will come and invade. Now, I agree, we need a standing army, but you also need people to sit and learn. Because if you say sitting and learning, oh, Torah this, Torah that, Torah's the most important thing. I'm not saying everyone goes sit and learn. You need people to fight, that's for sure. But you need that divine protection. If you don't have that divine protection, you can have the greatest army in the world. Doesn't matter. If you don't have that divine protection, you lose. Right? In the Torah, in Tanakh, there's many stories where God says, you're going to be in trouble over here, I'm not going to be with you. Right? You should be able to take care of these people, but I'm not going to be with you and you're going to lose. That's what happens. So the person says, if I would be in the army, Syria's going to come and invade. I said, oh, you're a heretic. He's like, what? I'm a heretic? Yeah. You don't believe in the power of Torah, but how can a rabbi, head of a yeshiva, say there's nothing more important than doing the army? Nothing! Not even Torah. If you tell me there's a mitzvah, the Sanhedrin would say, okay, we're at war, and everyone has to go fight. Everybody has to go fight. Everybody has to go fight. We're not living in those times we don't have a Sanhedrin. But not only that, forget about the army. They don't even need people. Plenty of people, and wars are fought differently anyway. So they don't even need as many people. It doesn't really matter. Right? It's just a volatile issue. But when someone can say this is more important than Torah, then you got to question everything else that they say. The person made other statements as well, other heretical statements. Moshe Rabbeinu wasn't a good leader, and Abraham and God failed the Akedah, failed the binding of Isaac. I mean, the list goes on. The list goes on. But this person, this person in Boca, he's a person of well-standing, well-respected, has his own Beis Din, right? This has nothing to do with knowledge, right? I'm not even questioning what he knows or what he doesn't know. That's not even the issue. And he can know 10 times more than me. It has nothing to do, with jealousy over here, right? What it has to do with is we always have to ask the question, what am I doing right now? Am I drawing myself closer to God? Am I doing a good thing? Or am I doing something that's going to take me away from God? Right? It's a basic question that every action that a person does, we should ask before we do it. Everything we do shall be calculated, right? Should be calculated. We don't always do that. We have knee-jerk reactions. We always, sometimes we react before we even think, but we have to do things methodically. Now, if I have a doubt whether something is good or not, and it's going to make me a better Jew, then I probably shouldn't do it, or I should ask somebody. Now, I would ask the following question. What's the good over here? The only thing I can think of is going to say, wow, we're showing how open-minded we are. We're broadening our horizons. We're bringing other people who don't necessarily think like us. And we're even going to bring them into our home turf. See, we're not going to the church. We're not going to do that. Can't go into a church. But he's willing to come to us. Yeah, of course he's willing to come to you. Makes perfect sense. Why he would. But at the same time, is this something that God wants? Is this something that's going to draw people closer? He's a motivational speaker. what is he going to quote? Musa? He's going to quote Musa to bring people, give them fear of heaven. He's going to bring them closer. I'm not saying he's intertwining things that necessarily forbidden. He might do that. Right? 100% he might do that. Right? But even if he doesn't, what in the world's the difference? Why would I say it's any different? It's not being a sanctification of God's name. People make that mistake. And he himself said it was a desecration of God's name when when people protest against his other missionary. Why is it desecration of God's name? They're sticking up for Torah, saying this is an abomination. This is a horrific thing that you're allowing something that totally doesn't have our values, goes against our values, is an open missionary trying to convert Jews. So what do I care if he's talking about tiddlywinks or he's talking about how to bake cookies? What do I care? You're not bringing him into a synagogue. You don't bring him into a synagogue. You don't bring him into a rec room near the synagogue. You don't bring Orthodox Jews around this person. Why? Because we don't want to hear what he has to say. We're not interested. We're not interested in anything this person has to say. Now, some people say, because I got 2 minutes here, some people say, come on, that's being very close-minded. No, we're protecting ourselves. We have an obligation to make sure whatever we learn, whatever we see is kosher, and that it's proper. Otherwise, we give into the evil inclination. It causes other problems, causes many other serious problems. We don't need to tempt, Mr. S. We'll call him the Satan, the evil inclination, the angel of death. We do not need to tempt him in any way, shape, or form to see how I'm gonna do over here, right? Let's tempt him and see. Okay, you're gonna pass the test? You're not gonna pass the test. Why in the world am I gonna tempt him over here? Why would I take a fox and put him in a chicken coop? I wouldn't do that, because what's the fox gonna do? He's gonna rip apart the chickens. That's what he's gonna do. Is this guy gonna do that? Maybe he won't. Or maybe not going to say anything heretical. Maybe not going to say anything about Christianity. Doesn't matter. You don't bring him into the. You don't bring him into the doorstep. You leave him outside the doorstep. You don't bring anything to him. You don't bring anyone to him. Why? You're gonna say, "What? We're so weak." I'm not saying we're so weak, and that person has anything to offer. You don't tempt fate, right? That's the bottom line. You don't tempt fate over here, and we're not interested. We're not interested in doing that, and we don't care what this person has to say. And if you want to call me closed-minded, people call me a lot of things. Anyone has any hate mail, send it to him. Send it to William, not to me, right? But we're not politically correct. We're not supposed to be politically correct. We have to stand up for Torah. And there are times we have to make a protest, and this is one of them, right? And people should be flooding this rabbi's email, spam them. I don't care. Send it to this missionary. Say what a busha, what a disgrace. How you go to a synagogue, blah blah blah, goes against Torah, this and that. Yeah, it's something that should be stopped, not something we can just sit around and say, oh, it's not a problem, right? Because you get somebody who's well respected, really well respected. I'm not sure why, but well respected in the Orthodox community. He's on cover of magazines, speaks in different places, and he lets a sewer into a synagogue, right? It just boggles the mind, and that's because his mind is cracked. He doesn't think there's anything wrong with it because he wants to be so open-minded till his brains fall on the floor. And that's it. I'm going to stop right there on the dot. So I'm going to be generous over here. I'm not even going to go over because you're going to hammer me over the head.
I hear you. I have a double mute on my side, and I turned one of them off. I forgot to unmute the other one. You did really good.
That's good because I wouldn't want to listen to me, so I'm glad you don't have to listen to me either.
No, you did good on the time. I was literally looking at my watch. I was like, man, I think we've only got about 2 minutes left, and you called it right on the spot. So
I was waiting for you to send me the chat. So before I got the chat, I had to do it myself. So that's it. I'm always going to look at the clock. I don't want to give you too much time because I know you got another show in 10 minutes.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, and thank you all for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe, hit that like button, and to turn on all notifications so you know every time we have action. Take care, everybody. Thank you for tuning in, and Rabbi, we'll see you again next week, Hashem willing. Thank you all.
Sounds good. Sounds like a plan.
There you guys.